Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you love a good billionaire drama with high stakes, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The atmosphere is tense, yet magnificent. This isn't just any love story. It's one tangled in power, betrayal, and the kind of passion that takes years to build, only to threaten everything in a moment of high stakes. A cityscape stretches beneath the windows of the palazzo, the skyline glittering under the orange hue of the setting sun. Inside, the grand ballroom is a vision of elegance. Velvet drapes hang from the ceilings, and the walls are lined with old portraits, each one telling the story of the Ricci family's legacy. At the center of it all, a gathering of the city's elite, whispers circulating in the crowd like an Ichigai undercurrent of tension. At the head of the room stands a figure of power, Dante Ricci, the billionaire CEO whose fortune has grown as rapidly as his reputation. His icy blue eyes scan the room, but there's no warmth behind them. His gaze is one of calculation, weighing everything and everyone. Yet, his demeanor betrays a vulnerability only a few can see. And then, there's her, Evelyn Sinclair, a woman of simple beginnings, but with a vision that could change the world. Yet tonight, the glitter of the room cannot disguise the storm, brewing beneath the surface of her poised exterior. She holds a glass of champagne, its bubbles like the anxiety that bubbles beneath her calm. Tonight was supposed to be her breakthrough, the launch of her innovative business pitch to a room full of investors. Instead, she will soon face the man who could either destroy her dreams or give her the chance of a lifetime. What's about to unfold? Evelyn Sinclair had not always belonged to this world. Raised in a small apartment, she remembered the smell of her mother's cooking, a mixture of garlic and rosemary, and the worn-down furniture, each piece carrying years of memories. Her father had been an artist, though not a successful one, and her mother, a teacher, always believed in Evelyn's potential to do something greater. It was in those humble beginnings that Evelyn had learned resilience, the kind that didn't break in the face of rejection. Every rejection letter she received was like fuel to her fire, and it kept her pushing forward. Her dream, to create a technology that would revolutionize the fashion industry. Sustainable, intelligent design. It was her passion, her life's work. But tonight was not about passion. Tonight was about proving that she had the courage to stand in front of a room full of the world's most powerful people and demand that they see her vision. And if she failed? Well, she wasn't sure she could face another rejection. Not now. Not when she was so close. The lights dimmed, and Evelyn's heart began to race. The moment had come. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The projector whirred to life behind her, a beam of light illuminating the sleek design of her new line of smart, sustainable clothing. The audience was captivated until Dante Ricci stood up. He had been watching her presentation closely, his face unreadable. But as she spoke, he interrupted her. "This isn't going to work," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "This idea is unrealistic. It's naive. You're wasting everyone's time." The silence in the room was deafening. Evelyn stood frozen, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, her carefully crafted words forgotten in the wake of Dante's harsh dismissal. The sting of humiliation was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the eyes on her. To the feeders, investors, the media, all of them waiting for her to respond, to salvage the wreckage of what had just occurred. But then, the twist. Dante's words weren't just a rejection. They were the beginning of something else. What did Dante Ricci really want from her? Evelyn retreated to a corner of the room, her back against the wall, her breath shallow. The weight of failure pressed down on her chest, suffocating. She had worked for this moment her entire life, and now it was slipping away, destroyed by one man's cold dismissal. Her best friend, Leela, appeared at her side, a comforting presence in the sea of judgmental stares. "Don't listen to him. He's just a man with too much power and too little heart," Lila whispered, placing a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. But Evelyn wasn't sure. The sting of Dante's words still rang in her ears. She wanted to believe in her dream, to believe in herself. But the reality was harsh. There was no second chance. Not here. Not now. Just as Evelyn felt the weight of the world crashing down on her, Dante Ricci appeared before her once again. His blue eyes, still cold, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "I told you it wasn't going to work." "But I was wrong," he said, his tone softer now, yet still commanding. "You're the only one who can fix my company's mess. You're the only one who can save my legacy." Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. The man who had humiliated her, now asking for her help? What game was he playing? And why her? She wanted to say no, to walk away, to leave the tangled mess of business and billionaire egos behind. But the idea of saving his legacy, it tugged at something deep inside her. What would it mean to say yes? The days that followed were a whirlwind of power plays, shadowy meetings, and unspoken tension. Evelyn was thrust into the world of Ricci Enterprises, working closely with Dante to salvage the company's crumbling reputation. But every step forward was met with resistance. Dante's icy matriarch, Valeria Ricci, watched Evelyn with a critical eye, her sharp gaze a constant reminder of the world she had entered. The media vultures circled, whispering about the mysterious woman who had somehow captured the attention of the Ricci heir. And amidst it all, Dante remained an enigma, distant, calculating, and yet undeniably magnetic. Could Evelyn trust him, or was she just another pawn in his game? Days passed, and Evelyn found herself deeper and deeper in the world of Ricci Enterprises. But it wasn't just business that consumed her thoughts. Slowly, Dante's icy demeanor began to crack. Just a little. Their interactions, though charged with tension, were also filled with an unexpected vulnerability. One evening, as they worked late into the night, the sleek offices of Ricci Enterprises were bathed in the soft, golden glow of desk lamps. Evelyn sat in front of a laptop, her fingers typing furiously as she worked through a set of projections that might save the company. Dante, seated at the far end of the room, had his back to her, facing the towering city lights outside. For the first time, Evelyn noticed the subtle slouch in his posture, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. "You've been working non-stop," she said, her voice soft but firm. Dante turned slightly, locking eyes with her for a brief moment before turning back to the window. "It's what's necessary," he replied, his voice low. "I can't afford to fail now." Evelyn stood, moving toward him. She wasn't sure what it was, perhaps the vulnerability in his voice, or the look in his eyes that seemed to hide a deep burden. But something inside her shifted. "You don't have to carry all of this alone," she said, her voice quieter, now more intimate than before. She set a steaming cup of tea on the desk in front of him, a small gesture, but one that meant something. Dante's gaze flickered to the tea, then back to her, but he said nothing for a moment. The silence between them was thick, laden with the unspoken. Slowly, he reached for the cup, taking a small sip, his gaze lingering on her face for a fraction longer than usual. And for a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, the walls around him seemed to crack. Was this the beginning of something more? As Evelyn and Dante's partnership began to grow, so did the complexities of their relationship. While they worked together closely, their progress was continually interrupted by the ghosts of their pasts. For Evelyn, it was her ex-fiancé, Richard Blake, a man who had once promised her the world, only to betray her when it mattered most. For Dante, it was a history of strained family connections, most notably his former lover, Isabella. One evening, at an elegant gala hosted by Ricci Enterprises, Evelyn found herself cornered by none other than Richard. He stood in front of her, dressed in a sharp suit, his dark eyes gleaming with something she couldn't quite place. "It's been a long time, Evelyn," he said, his voice smooth, too smooth. Evelyn froze, her breath catching. She hadn't seen Richard in years, not since he had left her for a woman with more connections, more power. The sting of that betrayal still burned deep inside her, and seeing him now, smiling like nothing had ever happened, was like salt in an old wound. "What do you want, Richard?" she asked, her voice colder than she felt. Richard stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. "I think we need to talk," he said, his tone carrying an edge she couldn't quite decipher. Before she could respond, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Dante. He had been watching from across the room, his eyes narrowing as he saw Richard standing too close to Evelyn. The tension between the three of them crackled in the air, an invisible storm waiting to burst. "Richard, I think it's time you leave," Dante said, his voice clipped, commanding. Richard didn't flinch, but there was a glimmer of hesitation in his eyes. He glanced between Evelyn and Dante, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Maybe I'll see you around, Evelyn. Don't forget, we have unfinished business." With that, Richard turned and walked away, leaving Evelyn standing. With Dante, her heart racing, her thoughts in turmoil. What had Richard meant by that? And why had Dante intervened? Could the ghosts of their pasts truly be left behind? Or would they haunt them forever? The stakes had never been higher. A massive press conference had been scheduled to unveil the new direction Ricci Enterprises was taking. The world was watching, the media buzzing with anticipation. The future of the company, the legacy of Dante Ricci, rested in their hands, and Evelyn's. The ballroom had been transformed into a sleek, modern space, with large screens displaying projections of the new business models. Investors, reporters, and executives filled the room, their eyes focused on the podium where Dante and Evelyn stood side by side. But as the conference progressed, something unexpected happened. A journalist, sensing the tension in the air, threw a question at Dante that made his heart skip a beat. "Mr. Ricci, it's been reported that you've been working closely with Miss Sinclair. Can you confirm that your partnership has more personal stakes than just business?" The room went silent, the question hanging in the air. Evelyn stiffened beside him, her breath catching as the spotlight shifted from their plans to the murky waters of their growing relationship. Dante glanced at Evelyn, his eyes betraying nothing. His lips tightened into a controlled smile. "Our focus is solely on the future of Ricci Enterprises. The rest is irrelevant." But as the cameras flashed and reporters continued to press, Evelyn felt a shift inside her. She had never been one to hide, never been one to let others control her narrative. "That's not all," she said suddenly, her voice clear and strong, surprising both Dante and the reporters. The room fell even quieter as Evelyn took a step forward, her eyes locking with Dante's for a brief, intense moment. She wasn't sure where this confidence was coming from, but it felt right. This isn't just about business. It's about doing what's right for the world. And I won't let anyone diminish that." The world gasped. The reporters' questions intensified, their cameras snapping wildly. What would this mean for their future? And how would Dante react to the very public revelation of their growing bond? The press conference had been a turning point, both for Ricci Enterprises and for Evelyn and Dante. As the chaos of the media settled, something new emerged between them, something raw, something real. That evening, as the world outside carried on, Evelyn found herself in the quiet confines of Dante's penthouse. The city lights sparkled beneath them, and the world outside seemed far away. Dante approached her, his usual composure faltering for the first time. "You were brave today," he said quietly, his voice a mixture of admiration and something else, something deeper. Evelyn met his gaze, her own feelings a tangled mess. "I couldn't let you carry all the weight," she whispered. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. For the first time, there were no barriers, no icy walls between them, just the raw, undeniable connection that had been building between them all along. "You've saved me," Dante said, his voice hoarse, his emotions clear. And in that moment, Evelyn realized that she had not just saved his legacy. She had saved them both. Could this be the beginning of something truly lasting? Or would the world tear them apart before they had the chance? The city's skyline glittered like diamonds in the night. But for Evelyn, the real brilliance was in the work that lay ahead. The press conference was behind them. The world had taken note of their partnership, and Ricci Enterprises was slowly recovering from its public scandals. Yet, in Evelyn's heart, something deeper was stirring. She stood before a new project, one that had been in her mind for years, but which now had the weight of her heart and Dante's trust behind it. She had always dreamed of using her success to make a difference, to give back in ways that truly mattered. And now, as she stared at the blueprint for her new initiative, a foundation that would combine fashion with sustainability, a cause that would uplift the most vulnerable communities, she knew this was just the beginning. The room she was in was filled with sunlight pouring through large windows, casting long shadows on the floor. The space was a modest office, not the luxury penthouse she had grown accustomed to during her time at Ricci Enterprises, but it felt like home. It was the beginning of something entirely her own. She picked up the phone, her fingers hovering over the screen for a moment before pressing Dante's number. "It's time," she said, her voice steady. A few seconds passed before his familiar, confident voice responded on the other end. "I'm ready. Whatever you need, Evelyn. You know that." "I need you here with me, Dante," she replied, the words feeling more real than they ever had before. "This isn't just about business anymore. This is about changing lives. Together." And as the call ended, Evelyn stood there looking out over the city below. A wave of emotion surged through her, but it wasn't the kind of uncertainty she'd once felt. It was the quiet certainty of knowing she was no longer alone. Dante's presence in her life had become a steady anchor, one that had helped her find her way back to her own purpose. The foundation would launch soon. It was something the world would notice. But this time, it wasn't just about saving a company or protecting a legacy. It was about building something new, something that mattered. Evelyn's dream had finally evolved into something bigger than herself. And as for Dante, he had stepped aside, his power no longer dominating every decision. He had become her ally, her partner, not just in business, but in a life she had never imagined for herself. What was once an icy, distant figure had turned into a man who was now willing to stand beside her, not in front of her. The camera zooms in again on Evelyn and Dante, standing together at the launch of her foundation. The crowd claps and cheers as the first wave of donations pour in. They're not the stars of the evening, the cause is. But to Evelyn, the moment feels like a personal victory. As they exchange a look, a quiet acknowledgement of how far they've come, the camera pans back, the city lights sparkling in the distance, the promise of a new chapter just beginning. What a ride, right? The narrator's voice fades in, warm and reflective. From rejection to redemption, from corporate politics to real, heartfelt change. Evelyn and Dante's journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. But what about you? Have you ever had to take a risk for something you truly believed in? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling love stories, business battles, and unforgettable twists. What's next for Evelyn and Dante? Stay tuned for the next emotional roller coaster.